Call to order the regular meeting of the Governing Board. Let the record show all members are present. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as adjusted?
I move we adopt the agenda with the exception of moving items 7C and 7G off of the consent agenda for separate consideration.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
What are those items?
C
Items C,
is the human resource changes, and G is the authorization to enter into sole source.
Can I ask why the request?
Two different board members requested them. All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
This is our fun meeting of the year. We get to nominate and elect our new officers. Can I get a nomination for the election of president? Darcy.
I'd like to nominate Jenny Frank.
I will second that. All those in favor?
Is it open for discussion?
Certainly. Oh, wait, generally do you want it?
I was curious, Ms. Frank, if how you'll ensure that the perspective and viewpoints of all board members are heard at agenda reviews as well as on the agendas.
Well, I'm certainly open to any requests by email, any requests by phone. I think we did include that as a norm. It was discussed in in our retreats that if a board member had a request for an agenda item, it would be placed on the agenda. So I would certainly want to make sure that all board members' views were heard during meetings. And if any board member had an item they wished to have placed on the agenda for discussion, I would honor that.
Okay. I have a couple more questions. In an additional effort to support that thought process, tonight, would you be willing to support Ann Ordway or myself as Vice President to ensure that all stakeholders and constituent voices are represented at the agenda review meetings and to provide a broader perspective?
Are you asking me would I be willing to have additional board members at agenda review?
No, the question was specifically if you would be willing to support Ann Ordway or myself as Vice President to ensure that both perspectives, this board is seemingly divided on a majority of issues, and in order to kind of ensure you have a perspective from both sides in those meetings.
I think it's possible to have both perspectives, and I would consider all perspectives regardless of who is elected vice president.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Ms. Frank, would you like to take over?
Okay, so I would like to call for nominations for vice president.
I'd like to nominate Ann Ordway to the position of Vice President.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Or is there any discussion? Excuse me.
I actually would like to make a comment.
Please do.
And it goes to the question I had asked previously. I do think that it is meaningful to have a broader perspective when you have, again, because we are so divided divided on many issues from this board, that I would disagree that all perspectives are seen on the agenda or in agenda reviews or in how other manners, maybe other matters are sometimes handled. So I would appeal to my fellow board members to please consider Ann Ordway. She does have many years' experience on the board, and I would tell you that there are times when board members, board members on this board have said certain people come to them because they are trusted and they support their viewpoints. I think that we all have those types of people who come to us, and so in an effort to have all voices represented, I think that it would be a sign to this community, to our students and staff, that we are working to represent everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mrs. O'Brien. Further
I have a
comments?
comment, yeah. This is so unusual to ever see this happen. Everybody's voice has been heard. Everybody's voice has been included. Every voice has been asked for. I am amazed that any board member would publicly try to force their agenda when they've already been heard and talked and throughout the year, throughout 3 years. The greater question, especially if you're going to talk about a VP, would be what is her financial background? Majority of the VP is reviewing vouchers and reviewing financials. So that would have been a valid question, but somehow to try and guilt or pressure any board member into a decision if you want to be a good community member, I just have to say I'm kind of appalled at that type of a manipulation. I just am. I just have to say that.
Do we need further discussion prior to the vote? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay. I would like to nominate Darcy Tweedy for Vice President.
I'll second that.
Discussion.
So based on Mrs. Fisher's comments, the financial background for Mrs. Tweedy to review vouchers and furthermore, I would ask Mrs. Tweedy, are you able to attend agenda reviews? You're a teacher, and I know you are in a very fixed schedule.
Yes, I mean, it's not going to be during the school day. It'll have to be after school. I actually do have a financial background. I was a securities broker before I was a teacher, and I was also in accounting at a law office.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Then I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Right. So I believe this concludes Game of Thrones, Deer Valley Edition. And, oh, no, not quite yet. The cliffhanger. So now we need to elect the legislative delegate for the Arizona School Boards Association. Ms. Tweedy, do you have a nomination?
I'd like to nominate Kim Fisher.
I will second. Discussion. Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Thank you. All right. So now I believe we have an executive session scheduled, so I need a motion to move into executive session.
I'll make a motion that we go into executive session. And you've got the written, somebody,
Okay. Pursuant to ARS 38-431.03.A.3, discussion or consultation for legal advice with the attorney or attorneys of the public body, open enrollment policy.
Second.
So Ms. Fisher seconds. All those in favor?
aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Obviously not. All right, so we will now move into executive session. So I need a motion to end our executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Ayes have it. So we will reconvene the regular meeting of the governing board. It's been brought to my attention that we have a community member who wished to speak prior to the election of the school board officers and did not understand that I assume this needed to be presented before. So normally, we don't have public comments at the beginning, but I think we will make an exception here so this community member can have her say and won't have to sit through the entire meeting if she doesn't wish to do so. Ms. Tweedy, if you will read the admonishment.
The board invites public comment on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. All speakers must observe the rules of decorum. Speakers must fill out a card listing name, address, and topic and hand it to the board secretary prior to the president calling the meeting to order. Speakers must make their comments in no more than 3 minutes. If necessary, to accommodate all speakers within the 30-minute overall limit, the board president may shorten each speaker's time. Constructive criticism is in order. Rudeness, vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disrespecting personal dignity are not in order and will not be allowed. Under the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the governing board cannot discuss or act on any items not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticism made by a speaker, ask a staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be put on a future agenda.
So if you'll please state your name for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
I'm Sherry Patinella, and thank you, Jenny, for allowing me to speak tonight. I've spoken before. I live in the school district. My children are both in college right now. I'm a little concerned about the board representing the diversity of the people that live in our district. I voiced my opinion about the former president on Facebook today, and her daughter decided to talk about how because her mother was a Christian that she didn't think Muslims should be able to teach their children. But anyways, the thing is that I'm concerned that the board is not representing all the ethnicities, religions, etc. in the district. I'm also concerned about the bullying that goes on by Mrs. Fisher on Facebook previously.
Excuse me, Mrs. Patnell, you're not allowed to discuss specific members.
Sorry. I don't like any of the bullying that goes on by any board member. I've seen it personally on Facebook. We need to get back to civility. We need to represent the ethnic diversity in the school district. I'm a Christian, but I don't know. Everybody needs to have there should be no detractors to whether you're Muslim, Jewish, Christian, your ethnicity. I'm just really upset with the tone that this board has taken in the past year. Let me give you, and this happened a while ago. When my son was in 8th grade at Stetson Hills, he was asked to watch a video of President Bush at the time do a State of the Union. Not a big deal, right? He's president. Everybody should educate themselves. Fast forward a few years to when President Obama gave a speech prior to the school year to students. All he was doing was rah, rah, stay in school, get an education. And the board, and I'm not sure if any of you were part of that board at that time, the kids were made to get a permission slip signed to listen to the President of the United States say, stay in school. Those kind of things embarrass me. And I see the same kind of divisiveness and not respecting the differences in the past year from the board. Different incidences maybe, but same idea. I'm hoping that with the change that we will see cooler heads prevail and more representation of the ethnic diversity and all the diversity.
All right, thank you very much for your comments.
I would like to take the opportunity that I'm allowed to by this, since it was a personal attack. I'm glad you actually came, because it's the first time I'm going to get to actually openly respond. There's a lot of stuff that's put on Facebook by people who are anonymous. There's a lot of stuff that's put on Facebook by people
Facebook's
who've
not
never met
anonymous,
me.
though. Facebook's not anonymous. Twitter's anonymous.
No,
not
no, you
Facebook.
can be anonymous. Please let me finish. And I know it is because I've tried to find out who the individual was and was told by Facebook they don't have to tell me. Number one, I don't know what my daughter said to you today on Facebook, but she's 30 years old. She's
Values
entitled.
are taught at home.
She's entitled to her opinion.
And
Actually,
values are
she's
taught at
not.
home.
She doesn't follow a lot of what she's taught at home. But this is my chance to defend myself. I want to point out to you that I attend multiple churches from different religions. My husband, when I married him, was not even Christian. He was a pagan priest. My son is special needs. My daughter is gay. I am the most opposite person of the propaganda that is put out in hate by specific individuals, which is why I repeatedly put out an invitation to meet with me. So while I apologize that you are offended, I apologize that you were offended by false information. Do I stand by?
I saw some of the bullying on Facebook.
Do I stand by what I
personally.
believe? Absolutely, I do. But it's misinformation. If you'd like to have coffee, I'm welcome. I'll have coffee with you. We can talk about it. But I have never denied any child anything. My day job, and this is the reason I wanted to take the opportunity to defend myself, is all about caring for children. And I care for children that are black, white, Hispanic, Native American, Muslim, Christian, non-denominational. I don't ask them. So I invite you to continue to come to our board meetings. I invite you to watch them, and I invite you to ask questions, because there's truth and then there's propaganda. That's pretty much it.
Okay, so Mrs. Patinella, thank you for your comments. Mrs. Fisher, thank you for your comments, and I think we're ready to move on with the business at hand.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll start with governing board reports. Mrs. Ordway. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll make it short and sweet. It's nice to see everyone's face. Okay, so there might not be a lot of faces here, but I know they're doing something. Awesome beginning of school, having those Bobcats invade the Jaguar territory. Who would have known? We're going to have a bright and beautiful 18, and the second half of this school year is going to be so awesome. If you believe that, say yes. Oh, that was so quiet. Yes, it's going to be great. So we've got budgets at the state and elections and all sorts of cool stuff. So let's make sure we remember that students are number one. Thank you.
Thank you for your optimism, Mrs. Ordway. Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you. I'd like to say Happy New Year and welcome back. It's really hard to believe that we're starting another calendar year. I look forward to all that our students and our staff will accomplish in the second half of this school year. I'd like to thank Ms. Frank for writing the board's happy holiday message and Ms. Fisher for our welcome back message. Since the last board meeting, I was able to attend Arizona School Boards Association's annual conference with it was wonderful to have all the board members in attendance for professional development and for the opportunity to exchange ideas with fellow governing board members. Last week, the Arizona School Boards Association had a webinar on Proposition 123 and teacher salaries in school districts. It really was very good information. The highlight was approximately 85 to 90% of the Prop 123 money did go to teacher salaries. So I would encourage my fellow board members to watch it if they haven't already done so, which maybe they have. And today the governor held a press conference on education funding, and I'm glad to have this update here at our dais from actually the governor's office. But it included funding. His proposal for funding in education is a step in the right direction. I do want to thank the litigants in the capital funding lawsuit for bringing the parties to the table. I look forward to our state's political, education, business, and community leaders finding a funding solution that is equitable, sustainable, and consistent with what the Constitution explicitly requires. I would also like to say, congratulations to the folks in our new positions, and I look forward to a good year.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien. Mrs. Fisher.
I am so glad break is over. Is anybody else with me? Okay, they don't look like they're with me.
What?
You'll get into it. This is the most exciting time of the year. This is my favorite when we come back from break and we start getting ready for prom. And then I do student activities, so it's a lot extra fun for me. But one of the things as we do go into a new legislative session and we start talking about budgets, the one thing that I was very hopeful with and I wanted to share was that for a change, business managers are being talked to. My all-time favorite business manager, aside from Mr. Miglerino, did call me today, and we had a nice long conversation. Generally, if he's hopeful, I get hopeful, and he sounded hopeful. So I did want to encourage individuals to get on the legislative docket. Start watching what's happening. Start talking. Start sharing. But we have to stop the Republican versus Democrat fighting when it comes to education. We're not going to get anywhere. We're just not. It doesn't matter what kid comes in your classroom. Their parent is going to be one or the other. And if you're speaking one direction, their parent is the other, it hurts that child. And I just think that's going to be one of the important messages I want to give for the start of this legislative session is it should not be a Republican versus Democrat thing, because kids are not. Kids are nonpartisan, and that's why this is a nonpartisan position. Not saying you lose your values, not saying you give them up, but put kids first and think about kids. And I know that we may not have a room full, but I know there's a lot of people that watch this, so I'm asking that you talk to your legislators, not just the ones that are in your party. Talk to your legislators that are on the other side of the party, even if you end up getting into an argument with them. Just put kids first. We did go to ASBA, and I was pleased that the entire board was there, because I know it was very important to some board members that the board engage. But I was a little disappointed at the way things went. And I really had to do a lot of deep searching as to whether or not we should be part of ASBA. What are the reasons to stay with ASBA? What are the reasons to leave? The only district I know that has left was Gilbert at some point, and then it came back. And as I thought about it, ASBA and ASBO and organizations like that offer a lot to our schools. So I did do a little bit of research and came to the conclusion that the most important thing is that we maintain local control. And local control is at your school board level, not your school board association level. For that reason, I would like to request that we consider looking at all of our policies. Come up with a plan to look at our policies. ASBA has a wonderful team. However, if any future board decided they didn't want to be a part of ASBA, or there was a different, I think Dr. Finch had said that in his state they had 2 different associations. To leave ASBA, if you ever wanted to, you lose all your policies if they have a copyright, every single one. So I would ask that this board consider at least discussing our policies, following the ASBA, still continuing to use that, but modify the policies adequately to make them not be copyright protected, so that if any future board decides, because this, I gotta say, it's gonna be 2 years or more to alter them all, so this isn't a tomorrow thing. But my request is that we at least have a discussion in one of our meetings about modifying our policies so that they truly become ours, so that if any future board does decide that they don't want to be a part of ASBA, or that someone else comes along and they're a group, they at least have that option. Because otherwise we have forced them to either stay or lose all policies. So that's my one request.
So that will be something to consider going forward as we begin reviewing policies.
No, it's an agenda request for a future study session to talk
Okay.
about our policies.
Okay.
Okay.
Ms. Tweedy.
I'd also like to say welcome back, and I guess I just wanted to make one quick agenda request or for our work session. I don't know if it would need, well, you can decide, but I think maybe on our agenda, we maybe need to have a routine item that's just discussion of agenda requests, because we have so many out there, so that maybe we have some way to discuss what our priorities for requests are. Because I'm seeing the list getting like this. I haven't heard a lot of requests for longer board meetings, so I think we need to prioritize what we have.
I
But
haven't heard those requests either.
okay,
Okay.
that's it for me.
Okay, so I guess it's my turn. Welcome back, everybody. I would like to congratulate Mrs. O'Brien for her selection as the secretary of ASBA. They are lucky to have you in that position, so congratulations for that new position that you hold with ASBA. I would also like to thank Mrs. Fisher for the many hours she put in last year and the time and the commitment as our board president before passing the gavel on to me. So thank you. Would like to also recognize that at the ASBA conference, Mrs. Ordway and Mrs. O'Brien led a professional development workshop for board members. And I was very interested in the subject of their workshop, which for those of you who weren't there, which would be everybody but us sitting up here, what in spirit, was finding your voice and not being afraid to speak up on controversial topics. Your workshop was very professionally done. Your presentation was very well done. And my favorite part was when you handed out blank index cards for participants to write down a time that they were afraid to speak up. And the three of us sat there with blank cards like, we got nothing. So I know you may find that hard to believe. So I hope next year you'll have a companion workshop, which I would totally attend if the theme were when it's time to stop talking, because I could use that workshop. So we'd totally attend that. So thank you for representing our district at ASBA. And I think we will move on to the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. January is School Board Recognition Month around the whole nation. Yeah, even in the other stops I've been. What they told me, we couldn't buy you all new cars, though. They have rules or something.
Who told you that?
I don't know, Jim Miglerino.
Oh.
Mr. Miglerino, something about cap or something.
If Mr. Miglerino said it, it must be true.
So no new cars. But no, we just want to thank you for all the time and effort you put into this job. It's a thankless job. You get pressure from all sides, and you're elected to weigh all that information and do your best. So I'm looking forward to working with you again this year. And again, thanks for all that you do for us. About a standing O from Jim Rowe. And I also, too, I did put the governor's press release on in front of you. That was myself. Jim and I, or Mr. Migler and I, were there today at the press conference. And there'll be a lot written about it. I guess my 2 cents on what we learned or what was happening. It's better to be in the sandbox than to be outside the sandbox. So this is obviously not the best deal, but it's a deal. And I think the pressure from SOS, the pressure from parents, the pressure from the media even, is paying off. So he's recognizing that education has to be a priority. So we're at the table. The specific group that we work with is EFR. Is it EFR? It is. That seems to be the one that's the player, and so we've been able to connect through that group. And Mr. Guglielmo has been a part of that group for a long time. So I'm just now joining it this last year. So learning more about it, but it's nice to be at the table, and we're looking forward to working with the governor to try to obviously make these proposals come to life. Because it's now, these are just recommendations, and actually the legislature has to do the heavy lifting. But that, I don't know if you've seen the press conference or if you DVR'd it, it'll be, there were probably 50 superintendents up there and legislators that were with them standing there. So, and we're holding him to task that this is the bottom where we're going here, the bottom request. We want to even go higher. So he's at least listening, and so we'll see where it goes, and we'll keep you in the loop.
So moving on to item 5C, Fiscal and Business Services Report.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch. We have 2 reports to share with you tonight. Also wanted to extend my congratulations to the new board representatives as well. But starting with the student enrollment report, through the 88th day of school, just over 105 student decline comparing this period of time to a year ago. So we are seeing improvement at 0.3% in reduction. It's been as high as 0.7%. Remember, we built into the budget 1% decline, so we're continuing to see improvement, but just caution you that we get funded on the 100-day average daily membership. So it's, even though it's gotten better as we get closer to the 100th day, it doesn't mean that the 0.3%, we don't get to pick the lowest number, right? It actually will be the average. But needless to say, we're doing much better than we thought we were going to be doing when it comes to student enrollment. And I always like to reiterate that the lion's share of that reduction happens to be that we have a bubble of students, right? We graduated seniors to the tune of about 2,800, and we brought in about 2,300 kindergartners. So it's not an exodus. We're doing our job, and that's we're trying to overcome that bubble, if you will, in the distribution of students through the grade levels. And I'll pause for any questions regarding the student enrollment. If hearing none, maybe I'll move right into the financials reports for December, and wanted to just acknowledge and thank the board for allowing us to load those prior to the 24-hour notice, but obviously they weren't done when we went on break because we weren't completed with the month. So they were added to the material early yesterday just to make sure that you had a chance to take a look at them. We have seen an improvement, so year over year for the December month, we're about $50,000 better than we were a year ago, with a projected carry forward in this current year of $540,000. We picked up about $90,000 over November, the previous month. So what I would deduce from that is that we're tracking about at the same level that we were a year ago. The one thing that's not included in that is we will have to adjust our budget for current year funding, and that's going to be an improvement to us, so that $540,000 will actually grow bigger. If we don't use it in this year, there is no limit on the carry forward, so we can move it into next year's budget for future consideration. So with that, I'll stand for any questions, or actually I'm seated, right? I'll sit for any questions related to the December financial reports.
Are there any questions? I think you're off the hook. Okay, so item number 6, old business. There is no old business, so we will move on to the consent agenda. I need a motion to for the consent agenda.
I move that the governing board approve the consent agenda as adopted, with the exceptions of items C, and F.
Should be
C and G.
Oh, C and G, I'm sorry.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so then we move to item C. I need a motion for item C. 7C.
I move that the governing board approve human resource changes, item C.
Second.
Is there discussion? Did you have some questions, Ms. Tweedy?
No, I'm just going to state my position, and then if anybody wants to comment. First, thank you, Dr. Galligan, for giving us all the information that we requested. And after reading the report from the Association of Scholars and reviewing the Hanbon contract, all of my concerns on the Mandarin teacher, I at this point, I would be only able to approve a Mandarin teacher that had a contract with Deer Valley and was paid by Deer Valley. So if there's a way to make that happen, but that's my position, and that's why I pulled it.
Other discussion?
I did look at, I do also appreciate the, you providing us the information. And we actually, the actual contract is written in Chinese, so we really can't read the contract. What we did read was a summary. The summary of a contract is never a contract, and that made me very nervous. I did read through the information that Dr. Finch had sent us, that Ms. Frank had provided before, and so I looked through that. I also continue to do more research and look into just different things about Hanbon and about the Chinese government. And I believe that there is also a statute that says that we can implement nothing that potentially could overthrow our government. A little ironically, an article popped up on my LinkedIn today. So, I mean, this is obviously a topic of a lot of different people and different individuals and different groups. A lot of what we looked at was university-based, but the more I looked at it and looked at different things, I just have to agree with Ms. Tweedy. This is America. I fully support any type of immersion language, whether it's Mandarin, whether it's Spanish, whether it's Italian. It works. It is a good way to learn a language. But the individuals teaching that, we need to know that they are under our contract and they're under our rules. One of my greatest concerns was that under Hanbon and the Chinese government is they were very specific on certain things you could or could not teach. And it just concerns me that at any point in time we would do anything to influence. So I would have to agree. The only way I could support having a teacher, and I would support having that teacher, is if their contract was with Deer Valley. And so that I just, above all else, we have to protect America. And so that's just how I viewed everything I saw, unless someone could show me something different in regards to a teacher contracted with Hanbon and with the Chinese government. I can't do it.
I haven't heard from Mrs. O'Brien or Mrs. Ordway. Do you have comments, questions to add to the discussion?
No, not right now.
I could add.
Dr. Finch.
Just a thought. I read the same materials, and they were university-based, that's correct. Most of them that I read were that they were professionally written, but it was, this may be happening, it was all may, and this might be their intentions. It was all written that way, and I think the university world is different than the K-12 world, which is another whole discussion. But I think the articles were written that way, so I didn't put too much credence in it. It wasn't vetted. It was professionally written, but it wasn't adjudicated. So it was a person on the internet giving their opinion, which is great. Or there were some university scholars giving their opinions, but I don't think it wasn't adjudicated. I don't believe that was the case, because you could just tell by the writing. It was all implications, and the reader could fill in their perception. As far as the translation of the contract, I believe that's the exact translation, not a summary. And maybe Dr. Galligan could correct me, but I think we actually had a Chinese interpreter translate the exact contract. So if you read the contract, there was only really one line that was in question in there. I think it said that you will uphold the values of the
Chinese government.
Laws of the Chinese
both
government.
governments.
And if you think about it, if we were paying for someone to go to China and teach English, we would want the same as well. We wouldn't want them to speak bad about America. So I don't find that too unrealistic. That was the only wording in the whole contract that I could see that was even semi inappropriate or questionable.
No, it said that you couldn't. Well, it said first of all you would uphold both Chinese and American law. If our laws aren't congruent, I don't think we have congruent laws with a communist government. I don't think you
Right.
can uphold them both at the same time. The other thing it said is you couldn't speak ill of China or their values or say anything untrue. Do you think us and the Chinese government have the same truths about Vietnam, the Korean War,
Taiwan.
our relationship, one China?
Yep.
And they're teaching all subjects. I think soft propaganda is more dangerous in an elementary setting because they don't have the background in those things. They're actually going to believe what they hear. And I don't think having someone who's not, I doubt China has the same perception on their human rights violations as the United States. I would rather have the person have a contract with Deer Valley. I don't want our children learning about the teacher from China. If she comes here, you don't have to go very far to hear people bad-mouthing our government or our president. I mean, so they're getting to hear all sides.
So I see Mrs. Ordway wished to make a comment.
Well, I was just wondering if anybody read the email from College Board that gives a lengthy explanation and also an invitation, phone number, email to talk about the 2008 Chinese Guest Teacher Program. The articles that were on the internet for the university mostly were not even inferring that they were indoctrinating. What they were inferring is that they were leaving some stuff out, kind of like any country does with their going backwards in their history. We don't talk about a lot of things in our history books. But with all that being said and done, the guest teachers that we have at this point, what grade levels are they teaching, Dr. Galligan?
President Frank, congratulations.
Thank you.
And Ms.
I
Ordway. This particular teacher would be at supporting high school right now.
Right. So the curriculum in the high school curriculum, that is something that we develop, correct?
That is correct, and it would be the Mandarin course.
Okay. And so it mirrors what would be taught in French or Spanish or
In Spanish, yes,
whatever
that is
other
correct.
languages that we have. And those teachers are then evaluated the same way?
That is
Who
correct.
would evaluate them?
The principal.
Okay. So I guess personally, I'm just not understanding what the issue is of having these teachers. I just don't understand the issue. We have enough checks and balances, and if you think that if someone came here to brainwash or do whatever, might be untoward, whether they sign a contract with Deer Valley or not, it wouldn't change their mission. If you have met any of these teachers from Hanbon or have any kind of a real familiarity with this program from different districts, our district, you will find that most of the teachers would like somehow to figure out how they can stay here or lengthen their time. I had one of our teachers stay at my house. My son had the greatest conversations with her talking about how they don't have the internet and how it was so honest, and it was insightful. I've not seen, and I'm not in every classroom, I don't know, but I don't think there's ever been a complaint that any of the guest teachers from Hanbon has done anything that has been anything but above board and good for our kids. So it might just be ideology, but I don't think that signing a piece of paper that says Deer Valley on it would change much of the other contract. But that's what I think.
Thank you, Mrs. Ordway. So what I'm hearing from board members, I don't think it is a concern about a specific teacher or conduct of the guest teachers who are here. I think it's more with the organization that's providing the teachers. So, for example, I have a friend who teaches English in Japan. The schools over there have many Americans over there teaching English as guest teachers. But the companies that provide those teachers are not affiliated with the United States government. They are private companies. And I think this is part of the sticking point with this particular contract, is that it's an individual who's contracted with the Chinese government, and that's what I'm hearing. If someone would like to clarify, or if I'm misunderstanding.
The Chinese government is spending a lot of money to fund education in the United States and supplying their teachers that apparently come from the Communist Party. They're not vetting all. And so you can conclude that this is just an act of altruism on the Chinese government, but I don't think our relationship with that particular government would support that. Or you could look at historical events and think maybe they have a motive. I don't trust the Chinese government. I'll just put it out there. So that you're asking us to trust the Chinese government. I don't. So they need to have a contract with Deer Valley.
Go ahead, Mrs. Ordway.
I believe that in between them leaving China and stepping in a Deer Valley classroom, how many steps of vetting is there, Dr. Galligan? State Department, so on and so forth.
President Frank, Ms. Ordway, as I shared in the Thursday update, there are multiple levels of checks that happen from China all the way up through our government, the university, and Deer Valley as well. And then, of course, the visa companies themselves.
Okay, thank you.
We did review the process of filing the paperwork and filling out the paperwork, and it goes to whomever it goes to, and they file it a different direction and stamp it and move it, and I understand the process of this type of thing. This is not about the individual. It's not about their race. It's not about the individual. It's not about that. It is about the incursion of a foreign government in our school. And I am sorry, but I cannot get past a foreign government in our school. I just can't. If Hanbon was not associated, if they were a university and they weren't associated and funded through the Chinese government, okay. If it was anything of that nature, it's when it comes down to it, my problem is I could not, I can't support a foreign government in coming into one of my schools, and that's what I see this as. So this isn't against an individual. I just want to make that very clear.
So then what would our options be for filling this position if filling it with the current, under the current contract or the one that is presented to us? What are our options if that's unacceptable to the board?
President Frank, currently we would not have another teacher.
Do we have other teachers in the Mandarin program who are not contracted through Hanban?
President Frank, all of the teachers that we have that are in the Mandarin Immersion and Mandarin Specialist program are attached to a classroom with students, mostly at elementary, K6 and K8. So they are attached to grade level classrooms and then also work with a full school in specials.
How many teachers do we already have that are paid by a foreign government? That perhaps the board approved and didn't notice or whatever.
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, I will need to get that information to you, and I can do that this week. I don't have that information right in front of me.
Thank you.
Is it possible to offer this teacher a Deer Valley contract separate from the other?
President Frank, we would need to look at the visa company requirements and specifically what they will allow or not allow. They are very, there is much compliance that goes along with the visa companies. So that would be something that we would look into for this particular teacher and then any other Hanban teachers possibly, that what their visa companies would allow and would not allow. And we can do that this week. I don't know that we would have that information by Thursday.
I understand that might take some time. So I don't believe we want to hold up all of the HR changes while we wait for that information. Do my fellow board members have suggestions on how to proceed?
Frank, sorry, I have a question, if you don't mind, before you proceed. So do we have students sitting in a classroom waiting for this teacher, Dr. Finch or Dr. Galligan? Do we have students waiting for this teacher? Or without a teacher right now?
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, actually this teacher would be working in conjunction with the other Mandarin teacher, Ms. Bai, who has been at Boulder Creek for many years. And so it would be, obviously, the goal was to have that teacher work with students as well. But Ms. Bai, who is the Boulder Creek teacher, already has that responsibility as well.
Okay.
So then no student would be left without a teacher if...
Ms. Frank, I can't give that exact answer. I can definitely give that information to Dr. Finch, and he can send that out to all of you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a motion on the table to approve the HR changes. Does anyone wish to amend the motion as it currently stands?
I'll amend the motion to approve the HR changes with the exception of the Mandarin teacher.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
You have to be specific with the name as it's written in the agenda item.
Oh, I'll have to pull up the name.
I don't know my kids.
Oh, yeah, it's Zhao Lu.
As long as it says Boulder Creek, I think you've got the right one, Darcy.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend the motion. Ms. Fisher, did I hear you second
Yes, I
the
did.
motion to amend the motion?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, I move that we approve the human resource changes with the exception of Zaulu.
Second.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Please do.
Are we, will that teacher, the Boulder Creek Mandarin teacher, then come back? Are we tabling that teacher to come back possibly, or is the motion as it was just read would be a disapproval? I just want to be clear on what we're doing and what I'm voting on.
No, thank you for the question. My understanding is that we would be provided with information as to what our options are for a contract separate from Hanbon, in which case it would then, I believe, come back for consideration.
So this motion is that's what I'm trying to understand, what this board wants to accomplish. If you want to disapprove this teacher, then I think the motion as stated and seconded does that. It approves everything but this teacher, which to me means we've disapproved, I apologize.
Good point.
And if we are really wanting to table that matter, I think that we should be specific in making sure we state that and do it.
I personally think it would be prudent to table until we have all of the information that we need. There is additional information.
If there's
that
a
will be
way
coming
to
us.
bring this back so that this teacher only has a contract with Deer Valley, I mean, that's a whole different thing.
Right,
So
I understand that. I'm just saying, given the current motion, I'm concerned that we're shutting the door. That's all. And so if the
No,
idea is to do
excellent
what
point.
President Frank has requested, then I think we need to modify it.
Well, the motion was to approve the HR changes without that one. We're not saying we're not approving that one, is the way you read it, but if,
I would agree. I think you can resubmit it next.
yeah,
the
it's
next-
not, that's the same way we did it the
It could be
last
disapproved
meeting.
again, or approved
Yeah.
Could
again.
be approved.
Okay.
Or not
okay.
approved.
I just want to
think
make
you're
sure I'm
safe.
not shutting the door, that we're not shutting a door, and
Yeah.
so.
You're not making a motion against. You're
Okay.
just not making a motion for,
Okay,
which makes it.
that's all I wanted to clarify.
I appreciate your clarification,
Thank you.
Mrs. O'Brien. So we have a motion to amend the motion.
Second.
We have a second. We've had discussion. Are we prepared to vote?
Sure.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Right, but now we have to vote on the amended
Okay.
motion.
So we have voted to approve the amendment to the motion. So now we need to vote on the actual motion itself. I have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Further discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And the motion carries. Okay, so we are moving to action item 8A, approve addenda pre-approvals.
You didn't finish 7G.
Oh, I'm sorry, and that was my request. All right, so we are at item 7G, authorization to enter into additional sole source contracts for fiscal year 2017-18.
I move that the governing board approve item G, authorization to enter in to additional sole source contracts for fiscal year 17-18.
Second.
Okay, so since I was the one who requested that be pulled from the consent agenda, then I guess I will start off with my questions, since I'm assuming I'm the one with the questions. So on the sole source contracts, the first was an increase for behavior coaches for the ACEs, and I did see that you sent me an email right before the meeting. I didn't have a chance to look through it in great detail, and I don't recall if that question was answered. But my question, just for the record, is that due to an increase in costs from ACEs? Is it due to an increase in need because of a higher student caseload?
President Frank, that is due to an increase in the number of students attending the ACES program. They were identified this year, during the school year.
Okay, do we know, you may not know this off the top of your head, how many
The number is 3.
is what?
Three more students
Okay.
identified, causing the reason for the increase that is on the board
Okay.
consent agenda this
Okay.
evening.
So, thank you. And then my other question was on the increase to the advanced ed monies. And so I did want to know and you did send me a detailed answer, which I skimmed through, but just for the record, what do we receive for it was $39,900 that we pay to advanced ed?
Yeah,
President
I
Frank,
think-
I'll do my best
How about we have Jean come and
to maybe
talk to
fill in. Oh, no,
Yeah.
in fact, I'll just filibuster until Ms. Copen can actually answer the question appropriately. So,
President Frank, I'm just going to kind of go over some of the things that we provided in the answer just for the record. But for the annual membership fees, and this year we do pay additional fees because we are in an accreditation year, so it includes an on-site visit. But
Okay.
just some of the highlights that we benefit from with our relationship with Advanced Ed. Specifically, they really provide a third-party point of view. Reporting on through the accreditation process, they are ultimately going to credit the district, but they also provide insight on our continuous improvement processes, our use of resources, leadership in our district. Another thing they do is they accredit our high schools, which carries some weight in a different way for our high schools. What accreditation does is validates the credits that we're associating with the diplomas so that they mean something to employers and to universities, community colleges, things like that. And they also allow us to participate in AIA sports. So we have to have accreditation in our high schools to be able to do that. A couple other things, we do have 2 schools that are involved in an additional certification with our advanced ed is the STEM at Sierra Verde, and Canyon Springs is going to have a STEM visit in addition to our accreditation visit in February. They also provide us with, our state requires, specifically for our title schools, but it's great practice for all our schools, to go through a needs assessment process. And so the state does provide a tool for that, but if you are involved with advanced ed, you're exempt from going through that, using that tool in lieu of the advanced ed process, because they provide us a diagnostic tool, basically, that includes surveys from the different stakeholders that we did in August. I think that was kind of the big picture benefits that we included.
Okay. Are there other organizations that provide the accreditation that we would need? Or is Advanced Ed really the main one?
Yeah, they really are, and that hence the sole source process that we were going through for Advanced Ed accreditation.
And is the cost for this, you mentioned it's higher this year because we're going through the accreditation process, and that's, I believe, every 5 years?
Every
if I'm
5 years, correct, yeah.
So next year, the cost then would go down?
Right, so in addition to the annual fee for this year, there's a $4,800 fee for the accreditation visit for the team to come, and they basically spend 4 days with us. And then we are responsible for the travel expenses for them,
Okay.
for eight people.
Okay. And what is the annual fee minus?
So it actually comes out to $900 per site.
Oh, okay.
We divvy that up a little differently, like the district contributes, and then each campus has an amount that they contribute.
Okay. And what does each campus do with the information?
So each school completed this year for our accreditation a diagnostic, an individual diagnostic, and received their own surveys. So that piece is really used to generate identification of needs for the campus. So they use that tool to then write their continuous improvement plans. Then the district took all of those diagnostic tools, so 38 of those, and we are currently writing our district diagnostic, which will then contribute. We actually are in a very good year for this to be happening because we're generating a new strategic plan. So this whole process has really helped identify some and prioritize some needs for that plan. So based upon what campuses are telling us they need, then we're writing like an overall summary for the district to also submit, so we submit a systemic diagnostic as well. So all those tools are really helping us prioritize for our new plan.
All right, thank you for the information. Did anyone have any other questions, comments, discussion? All right, then I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, 5-0. Motion passes. So now we're ready to move on to action 8, item 8A, approve the addenda pre-approvals. So I need a motion.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the addenda as presented. I had a question on my motion. Am I motioning to approve A and B together?
I believe we're doing those as separate items, yeah. To stay.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Any discussion on the item? Questions? All right, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
I was trying to get into my board book to see what.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize.
Can we? Okay. I guess my question was, the CIAS summer work team coordinators, what do they do? And how long are their contracts normally?
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, they have a normal contract, 10-month contract. And so the actual work that they do in June with teachers for curriculum development, assessment, refinement development, and instructional PD occurs outside of their contract.
As far as the curriculum development, I guess my question would be, why doesn't that fall in their professional responsibilities, their normal contract?
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, their job description is pretty diverse. It includes curricular work, instructional practices, CIA, and assessment. So through the year, they're working with teachers and administrators. They're providing professional development. They're providing the assessments for our benchmarks and other assessments. They work with teachers on early release days and other PD. They have a diverse job during the school year. During the summer, for the addenda, they are working specifically with teacher teams, and we are not responsible then for providing substitutes. We're able to have as many teachers who are interested and able to work with us on instruction, assessment, and curriculum. And that occurs in June, outside of their normal contract.
Okay.
Mrs. Ordway.
Dr. Galligan, in June, they also do take the, I don't know if you call them surveys, but whatever information to make the curriculum more effective or better, because they would have all the results from the 2 semesters when they start working on it.
President Frank, Ms. Ordway, that would be correct. We would have data from assessments. We would also have our feedback. We solicit feedback from our educators as well as administrators about the curriculum, the text resources, and the assessments themselves.
Thank you.
I just have one question, and only because I was scrolling around and saw it when I was listening to the other comments. Mr. Migliorino, there's a whole section here that's 850. Can we approve it without meeting minutes for students at this? I mean, it's because it's a pre-approval. I mean, we have to have meeting minutes. And I understand that student activities pays for, student funds pay for it all the time, but the auditors require us to have meeting minutes.
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, that's a great question. And the section that is 850 is also potentially 525. If it was to be funded from 850, then we would require that they present us with the minutes at that time.
Our pre-approval is really essentially for you use that for your tax credit, correct? You use 525 for your
That is
tax
correct.
credit. I thought you were backwards from me. Not that you're backwards, but ours are flipped. Anyway.
Ours is backwards, just for the record.
Well, I know, but I didn't want to say it that way. I would prefer that we approve it with 525 and a potential. I guess we're not really approving the account code, just this. I'm just concerned that we'll have an audit issue.
President Frank, Ms.
Use for
Fisher,
C1.
I think the fact that we require that the minutes accompany this, if they elect to use that, will satisfy the audit requirements.
Okay. Now, do you guys do the meeting minutes for your tax credit as well?
Not for tax credits,
Okay.
only for
I
student
thought we were
activity.
the only district that did it, but okay. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't putting you in a pinch, unbeknownst. Okay. That was the only question I had.
Okay. Any other comments? Ordway, your question, Ms. O'Brien? No? Ms. Tweedy? Okay. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And action item 8B, approve addenda contracts. Can I get a motion?
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the addenda contracts in the attached listing.
Second.
You? Any discussion, questions, comments on this item?
President Frank, I just wanted to note it is one page, which is highly unusual for us, right? I mean, normally there's multiple pages of these.
And it's not
that
even
was
in,
what I was going to ask Mr. Mergoluner, and how many pages? So thank you for clarifying that in
You
advance.
mocking the system?
Jenny,
or
it's
what?
not even in Jim font, and it's one page.
Awesome. All right, so hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, do we have any other public comments?
I'll go ahead and go aye. He was waiting for my vote. I'll
Oh,
go
I'm
ahead
sorry.
and do aye. I was just looking real quick.
Do you have any other public comments? No? Okay.
Uh-oh.
So future meetings and dates are posted. And can I get a motion? I can't believe I'm saying this, to adjourn the meeting?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.